Hello and welcome to FortiGuard Live. I'm Derek Manky, VP Global Threat Intelligence at Fortinet, Fortinet's FortiGuard Labs. Joining me once again, we've had hundreds, if not thousands, of these conversations. We're looking at the threat landscape every day. Aamir Lakhani, good to see you again. How you doing?
I'm good. As they say, another day, another ransomware dollar.
And another face. You're the man of a thousand faces as well, aren't you?
Absolutely. I got my winter beard going on right now.
It's good to see you. Look good. So let's talk. Let's go back. It's been a while since we've talked about ransomware, but it seems to be always topical. I mean, we've been following this for over a decade, right, since it came out in 2010, and just wanted to kind of reflect on the year and see, for a snapshot where we are today, how it's evolved. We've talked about a lot of different things with ransomware in the past, right? Like ransomware becoming more aggressive. More targeted. We've seen the playbook expand to double extortion, triple extortion techniques. And then, more recently, the use of or the incorporation really of wipers into ransomware. So what are you seeing with wipers and ransomware?
Yeah, so first of all, Derek, I think the ransomware attackers are getting more and more creative in ensuring that the ransom gets paid, the payments have settlements behind them as well. So wipers are a new way of, I wouldn't say a new way, but another way of ensuring that attackers get away with the attack. It seems like a couple of years ago, most ransomware attackers and most ransomware threat actors were staying away from wipers. And I think mostly because they wanted to make sure that anyone that paid the ransom felt good about paying the ransom or wouldn't hesitate paying the ransom. And then I think we started seeing kind of an evolution of wipers where, people really just wanted to see the world burn. They didn't really care. They're like, we're going to attack you, for the heck of it, and we're going to cause you some pain. And now threat actors are realizing, you know what, I can ask for ransom, and now I can probably protect myself against, some sort of, forensics because once you have a wiper and there's no data to analyze, basically forensics is much, much more difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very interesting use case for the wipers too. In fact, we just released a blog of another ransomware turned wiper. So it's another indication of what we talked about, going back to the predictions of these targeted attacks and things that wipers used to be used in the APT realm exclusively, but now we're starting to see in case of ransomware for, like you said, forensics purposes, essentially covering the tracks, and then the other use of basically using it as a threat, as a weapon, right? When it comes to showing that they mean business. The other thing too, so you mentioned the settlements, right? I mean, like, the name of the game for attackers is obviously trying to profit more, to try to get more settlements. We've seen the monetary, effectively the amount of money that people are paying for these ransoms are going higher, because if you think about what the attackers are doing on their end, this is a business to them, and the victims are their customers, right? They want to grow their customer base, and they're focusing on the bigger fish themselves, and they want to be more engaged with their customers, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Attackers want to get paid. The threat actors want to get paid fast and as efficiently as possible. I personally think it's actually one of the reasons why attackers kind of stopped moving towards Monero, which is a cryptocurrency that has privacy built in. That's very, very difficult to track, versus like Bitcoins, which are, if you make mistakes or, it has a public ledger, it's very easy to track, but it's very hard to get millions of dollars in Monero versus, millions of dollars in Bitcoin. So I think attackers, we kind of saw this shift in, attackers using other types of cryptocurrency. Now they're like, you know what, I want to use Bitcoins. They're easier to get. Anyone can get them. We can get paid millions of dollars. We can get our money fast. And of course, it's much easier for attackers to change that money to do like money laundering or to do other types of conversions as well. So they can take that cryptocurrency and change it into real world usable money much more easy than other types of cryptocurrency.
Yeah, absolutely. Another sort of phenomenon that we're seeing is this this service engagement too. So we talked about how they want to be more connected with the customers, and we've talked about this with the ransom as a service model, right? So some of these, as we know with ransom as a service today, it wasn't the case 10 years ago, because 10 years ago it was the PPP model, PPI, pay per install. It's like, hey, go infect millions of systems, you'll get a small cut of this, right? So it was literally like thousands of people signing up to these PHP control panels and these programs, and that's really shifted now to the PPP, which is a pay per purchase. commission based, and it's more of a exclusive network, right? They don't have thousands of these people. There's like hundreds, if maybe not even hundreds, maybe up to 100, because they're vetted business affiliates and partners, right?
Exactly. The affiliates are actually making the majority of the money these days. They're going to the threat actors. They're actually, providing. Well, the threat actors are providing the software. The affiliates are actually, doing the distribution, doing kind of the technical work on like getting the systems installed in on their victims' machines and targeting the victims. And so they're getting the majority of the payments. But when I say the majority of the payments, there's no shortage of payments. We're literally talking about like payments in the millions to like tens of millions of dollars. And so like everyone is kind of happy from the bad guy's perspective.
Yeah. And exactly that. We're talking about millions, right? 7-8 figures. That's the big shift. And it's because, again, you have these elite, quote unquote, affiliates that are signing up, that are vetted, that have years of experience under their belt now. And what that means is that these are effectively the ones that are being more engaged with the customers, right? They're, because of that elitism, I think, that's feeling that they have, they want to deal with, they don't want to be bothered with or deal with the smaller, those 6 figures as an example, right? So they're like, hey, if they're looking for a 7-figure payment, they want to make sure that that customer knows that they mean business, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You got to remember the threat actors, they're not only just creating ransomware program, right? They're creating evasion techniques. They're figuring out how to get past security devices and security perimeters. They're coming up with, phishing techniques that the affiliates are using and combining with their own techniques as well. So there's enough technical, I would say, work happening from both the affiliates as well as the threat actors. They're kind of combining their forces. And at the same time, as you said, the threat actors are a little picky and choosy on who they pick. They really want people with, that kind of like baseline high level, type of skills, so they can adjust the programs and target the sources as they need. And there's more than enough. Like everyone's trying to get, they have a lot of people trying to get into the affiliate programs, but the threat actors are being really picky on who they choose. You kind of have to prove yourself in multiple ways now to get into those programs.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what this means is we can expect more of this. And like the net effect of this is you have essentially the cyber mafia, as we've called it before, right? But again, like more experienced peoples, right? Like more than one, that are actually launching their own campaigns effectively, right? So I know we were just talking about this. Something that you've observed is that, hey, you're actually seeing ransomware coming from a lot of different sources now, right? Not just ransomware showing up at the door, but through botnets and other things like this as well.
Yeah, exactly. From botnets, from plugins and web browsers, and I'm talking about like plugins and different sites like WordPress type plugins and things like that people may use. The types of ad networks. So they're coming in from multiple sources. Of course, as you said, from botnets, phishing attacks, Office documents, self-running macros. All of that has been going on for a long time, and no shortage of that either.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's the big change, right? Compared to a year or 2 years ago, is that we're seeing all these different types of campaigns, more vehicles, right, if you will, right, for the different distribution mechanisms. And they're becoming more picky, essentially, right, in terms of the targets they're going after, these 7 or 8 million, 8-figure payments. And at the same time, what that means to the defender is that these attacks are becoming more targeted. They're becoming more effective, essentially, and these settlements and transactions, right, are becoming higher value. So we want to try to avoid that, right? I mean, effectively, it's saying, hey, let's shift more to the left side on the defense, because we have to be more proactive nowadays, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that we have had to do at FortiGuardLIVE is to really understand the whole infrastructure. I think that's one of the biggest changes that I've seen, in just the last 6 months, is how advanced the ransomware infrastructure is, not only from the ransomware program itself, but like how to distribute the ransomware, how affiliates are signing up, how the money distribution is occurring, from money mules to laundering the money, like the whole kind of all the services around just ransomware for the threat actors to actually do business and live a life. That's much more complicated and much more efficient as it's ever been. And then at FortiGuard Labs, we kind of have to keep track of not only the ransomware, the actual malware attack, but also like how that infrastructure works, make sure we're keeping track of those command and control servers, those techniques, making sure those techniques, if they're exploited, that, you know, they're in our AI engines as models as well. So we have multiple opportunities to catch an attack. Our end goal, obviously, is we don't want people to be infected with ransomware, so we want to stop the attack before it occurs. And there's multiple ways to do that, from endpoint to web filtering to web and DNS filtering to actually catching the malware itself.
Yeah, and I think from an ROI perspective, it's becoming more effective nowadays too, because of that, the criticality of these, right? Again, once you get owned, you're owned. Now we have wipers introduced, the forensics trail of making instant response more difficult. All of that is the game, the game that the attackers are trying to up. And so from an ROI perspective, being more proactive, focusing on, like you said, AI, the AI powered, SecOps, and being able, because these attacks are coming from all these different platforms, all these different vehicles, everything that we just talked about, being able to identify and catch that up front and mitigate these threats, again, from an ROI perspective versus the 7 to 8 figure settlement demands that are happening, just makes a lot of sense, I think.
Yeah, I tell a lot of my clients that in your incident response plan or your incident response, engagement shouldn't just occur when you need it. It should be like an ongoing engagement. Your incident response teams or your vendors that are doing incident response should actually already be aware, like, how this process works, how the attacks are changing, how ransomware is changing from just like encrypting your files to wipers, how to recover against that, how to do forensics against, those types of elements. So it should be like an ongoing process that they should be really baked in, and it should, being tested all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, everything we've been talking about, this is here today. I think we can expect, this isn't a one-trick pony, right? I think we can expect a lot more of this next year, can't we?
Wow, I mean, it seems like they surprise us, like on how complicated and how efficient and effective they get it all the time. The threat actors. I hate to have this conversation next year and figure out like how they've elevated the game, but we know they're going to do it, obviously. So we got to elevate our game as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But it can be simple again. And I think relying a lot of the tools that we talked about from everything we always talk about when it comes to the education, the refactoring, it's not a one-shot thing, but let's have security as part of our daily mantra and look at this from a refactoring standpoint all the time. It has to be dynamic because the attackers are dynamic, right? But then at the same time, humans are slow. So we always talk about relying on the AI, machine learning, the orchestration and integration, all of that is, more of the next generation SOC component has become very critical nowadays from a solution standpoint, I think, as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like you just hit it on the nail on the head, is that it's not only the technology. Obviously, you need the technology, you need automation behind that technology, and you need multiple ways, that technology is protecting you, but the people factor as well, as you mentioned.
Yep. And if there's one thing we've learned through the course of our whole career, is that the cyber criminals and attackers are not going to stop. They do not give up easily. And in fact, it's the opposite, because they've been enjoying profits and, building their empire, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Why give up a good thing, right? I mean, for the most part, they have no reason to stop whatsoever.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, lesson learned from this is we're going to expect more of this next year. We were already seeing indications of wipers being used more in day-to-day attacks, I would say, now with cybercrime and ransomware. That's a big deal, right? So again, being more proactive, have solutions and mitigation in place to avoid those settlement payments, because when it comes to settlement and payment for ransomware, ultimately, it's just putting it into the pockets of cyber criminals, and that's something holistically we can work together to avoid. Aamir, I just want to thank you again for your time. It's always great catching up and talking to you. For the blog I referenced on the ransomware turn wiper, you can check out our blog on blog.fortinet.com. We're regularly posting on there, and I'm sure we will be back talking soon about the next threat. Aamir, thanks for joining me. Once again, I'm Manky with FortiGuardLIVE, signing off.